Hi, my name is Fungai Maborake, and this group is Taurai-Speak Up-Khuluman. Basically, these are Zimbabwean languages that represent the main three languages there. And we're a non-political social group that have come together to try and generate dialogue through the screening of a film about our president Robert Mugabe, and this film was done by a Zimbabwean filmmaker, Simon Bright, and that was the first time it was screened here in New York. So basically, our aim was to really say that there's been a lot of silence in Zimbabwe and also abroad in terms of what's going on over there. And my personal interest in getting involved was that I'm not a born free. I was actually born in exile, and my father was one of the liberation, uh, heroes. I call him a hero because he disappeared, and there's been a lot of silence from my mother, silence from the government, silence from everybody who happens to know what exactly happened to him. So this is a way of me breaking this scourge of silence. So I feel like getting involved, getting in touch with fellow Zimbabweans and expressing our views regarding what's happening around us and in our country is very important. So we decided to pick on people like Thomas Mapfumo, who's obviously the guru of Chimrenga music, who's out here in exile in the United States to come and lend a voice. And he's been doing this through his music. As you know, poets will keep on writing, singers will keep on singing, filmmakers will keep on making films. And I guess when the mood and the events change, we'll probably be showing different films in Zimbabwe. So this was a very relevant opportunity for people to come out and express their views and generally to speak up. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Tapiwa Chisagaitwa, and my personal motivation in teaming up with Fungai Nyasha, was basically to give that voice back to Zimbabweans, especially here in the diaspora, where you experience like a very democratic system, that freedom of speech, assembly, something that sometimes back home would be difficult to meet in such circumstances. And then coming here, I think it's under the premise of saying there's no power in silence. And then bringing this name, Taurai-Speak Speak Up, that basically gives credence to that we are trying to speak up to create a platform for everybody who has any interest in Zimbabwe, be it born there, friends of Zimbabwe, anyone who can come and join us and create a platform, have that dialogue and have that conversation going on matters that affect Zimbabwe. I think also, again, it's non-political. It's trying to get that middle ground, to create that dialogue, to just create that platform for people to express, and whatever actions that can come out of that sort of dialogue, wherever it goes, that's all up to people who take up that mantle. But really, what we were trying to bring, and my motivation personally, is trying to give that voice again to people who do not speak or cannot speak or won't speak because they are afraid to say it ends here, it stops here. We will galvanize together and we will talk, and then we'll talk about what's going on in Zimbabwe.
My name is Nyasha Gutsa, and I am a Zimbabwean as well, living in New York with my co-organizers, Tapir and Fungai. What inspired me to take part in organizing this event was a quote by Wangari Maathai, which she's once stated, saying that those who are burdened are those that know, and those who are at peace are those that don't know. And it is up to those who are burdened to do something about it. I felt helpless before the film came out, that like we wanted to do something in about what's happening at home, and we didn't have a platform to speak up. The film essentially created a platform, in my opinion, for us to start expressing our views and break this whole psychological barrier that's been placed on us of not speaking up about what's happening at home. We are the future of Zimbabwe, and I believe that it is time for us to start speaking up and do something about our country. We're all here to see the film Robert Mugabe, What Happened, and I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd also like to thank the school, NYIT, for giving us the platform to screen the film as well. And I'd like to thank Simon Bright, the filmmaker, who's here with us. If we can all give him a round of applause. I'd also like to thank our panelists who are here. We have Dr. Thomas Mapumo. I'm sure most of you know who he is. We have Douglas Rogers as well. It's got to be louder than that as well. So let's do it again for... We have Douglas Rogers, the author of The Last Resort. I know some of you have read his book. So he's here to moderate the panel after that. We also have Catherine Glenn. We can give her, both of them, a round of applause as well. And before I hand over the mic to Simon, I just want to let you know that we will be having a panel discussion like after, and we're going to try to also Skype in David Coltat, the Minister of Education in Zimbabwe, if we can reach him. And I'd also like to take this moment to thank my team, Fungai, Tapiora, and Ariel as well. I don't know where they all went. If they can stand up so we can go. Without further ado, I am going to introduce Simon.
Good evening. Actually, I want to say something like, good evening, New York, because I'm really thrilled to be here. And I really appreciate the fantastic efforts that Fungai and Tapiwa and Nyasha and Ariel have made in putting this show together, and generosity of the New York Institute of Technology for giving us a venue and for hosting me. It's with great delight that I got invited by the next generation of Zimbabweans who themselves were asking the question, Robert Mugabe, what happened, and found some kind of answers in the film, and wanted to share that with all of you. And what I look forward to is the discussion at the end, which you'll have a Q&A after, which I think will be pretty rich. Thanks for coming. Enjoy the movie.
Democracy in Africa. It's a difficult proposition because always the opposition will want much more.
What I really found important about Simon's film and very interesting about it is that as someone who's a Zimbabwean and experienced from 2000, I was living in the United Kingdom. I think, Simon, you based in the UK, is that right? I think the story of Zimbabwe in the last 10 years has been, or the last 12 years, has kind of been hijacked very cleverly by Mugabe, who's sort of painted the story as one of race. It's been a story of white farmers in many ways, oppressed by a man who has come across as like a typical African despot, like an Idi Amin figure, and the media have played into this. I think a lot of Western media have played up this role that Mugabe is a Mobutu or an Amin, and that most of the victims of Zimbabwe in the past sort of dozen years have mostly been white people. So this is what I found in the United Kingdom. I think American media sort of caught on to the story of Zimbabwe much later. But I wanted to ask Simon, is that what you found living in the United Kingdom when you started making the film? Because I think you get a brilliant look at the whole history of Zimbabwe from Rhodesian days, from the 60s right through to the present. And it's a very comprehensive story. There are four of us, well, three of us, and possibly David Coltart on Skype. It's very hard to ask all the questions that I'd like to ask because it's such a sweeping story, and I think you told it really well. I mean, I think, and I imagine a lot of Americans here were amazed by, for example, Mugabe comes across as incredibly articulate and intelligent and highly educated, which is what he is. And I think a lot of the media reportage of him is that he is this Idi Amin figure. And I wanted to ask Simon, my first question is that, did you set out to tell a story that was much more comprehensive than what most people possibly know about Zimbabwe?
Yeah, that was my motivation in a big way. I went to England in 2004 and perceived this demonization, which I found a kind of interesting parallel with the kind of black and white story that was being told in Zimbabwe, because Mugabe tells the story of that anybody who opposes him is a tool of white. So you have a black and white story being told down in the south, and that plays well in the African continent. And then you have a kind of demonization that plays in the north and helps to justify Mugabe's position in the south. So I thought, well, the reality of the situation, who are the actual victims? Out of the 25% of the population who are living in the diaspora, like you and me and the people who organized this seminar and Thomas Mufuma and stuff, what percentage of that is actually white farmers? A very tiny percentage. Most of them are very talented. So, I needed to kind of, and also the other thing was that I realized that there was a whole generation of people, amongst them the people who are hosting this session, who were born after 1980, who didn't have any memory of Rhodesia. And I grew up in a white activist family who were opposed to white supremacy. So I felt that story needed to be told, because otherwise you can't kind of understand, why was there a revolution? What was it all about? So yeah, definitely.
I guess I'm wondering your personal view, because what the contradiction at the end, or the different views at the end between, say, Simba Makoni or Jeff Nirota and the war vet, Wilfred Manda. Manda's saying that he has been entirely consistent in his career. Nothing has changed from Mugabe. He's been the same man. And some of the footage you use of the build-up to Gukuruhundi, and I can't remember the words, but saying we will crush them, is almost exactly the same language he uses 20 years later against the MDC. And I guess my question is a personal one, and perhaps starting with Thomas. I mean, did Mugabe change, or was he always this man who was prepared to use ruthless violence when he was threatened?
Mugabe has never changed. He has been the same man since he came into power. Some people were fooled by Mugabe, and the problem in Africa is hero worshipping.
Yeah.
He worships somebody just because he has been out there fighting a liberation war. He's not God, understand? Yeah. We must worship God, not human beings. So Mugabe is just a dictator.
Kathleen, what I wanted to ask you is sort of following on from that question, and you've lived in Harare post-2009, working for, you were a human rights lawyer. Were you working with the victims of the 2008 election, or were you with the U.S. government? What was your role in that period?
I was not with the government. By way of explanation, I'm Katie Glenn. I'm a lawyer. I currently teach at Fordham, although I'm not here on their behalf tonight. And I worked in Zimbabwe for Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, which is an NGO that does a lot of defense of political prisoners work and activism work, trying to spread the word about what's going on and document human rights violations in Zimbabwe. And while I was there, I was a staff attorney, and ZLHR, as most people know them, is one of the leading human rights groups in the country. There are a lot of really excellent civil society organizations working in Zimbabwe, a remarkable number of them given how much violence they face every day. But ZLHR reacts to pretty much any attack on a political opponent. Anytime someone has a march and people get arrested, they send a lawyer out to try to find out where the person is, to try to get them in front of a judge, to try to defend them as quickly as possible. And so every day was different because of that, which is something I was thinking about as the film was being shown, the fact that Zimbabwean civil society is remarkably strong in that it exists at all in the face of so much repression. But at the same time, they're constantly on the back foot because they are all constantly dealing with so much repression on a daily basis, so much fear, so much intimidation, and in many cases, so much physical violence, up to torture and murder. So every day we would just react to what happened that day. If Women of Zimbabwe Arise, which is an excellent organization in Zimbabwe of women and men who go into the streets on a regular basis to demand change and to demand basic human rights, if they held a march and were arrested, we would send lawyers out to try to figure out where they were, to try to get to them as soon as possible, to try to get them a lawyer. We did work at times with victims of the violence in '08. We also worked with some of the victims of Operation Murambachina, which the film covers, the 2005 slum clearance, as the government referred to it at the time, operation, who are all, to my knowledge, still without homes, still living in temporary transit camps on the outskirts of Harare, having received no compensation, to my knowledge at least, from the government for what happened to them.
What did you think about this film, Robert Mugabe, What Happened?
It was intriguing and yet informative. I really didn't know much about my own president from back home, considering that our school history curriculum just focuses on the positive side of him as, I don't know, like our savior, our God, our hero, and just how, like, the media, the British, the United States are viewed as our oppressors and Mugabe the oppressed.
I think people like me right now need a starting point to find a way back to Zimbabwe. We need to know that there is some sort of progress, or that I can live in Zimbabwe and have freedom of speech or be able to express my views. I don't feel that. I'm afraid to go home now. And that's not how it should be. So I would want some sort of starting point to know that, okay, if we start with the changing the constitution, then what's the next step? And I want to be a part of that, because obviously keeping quiet, like you said, doesn't help me, doesn't help my children, doesn't help anyone else who might want to go back to Zimbabwe someday. But a quarter of the population have left in the last 12 years. So how do we get that quarter in this people between the ages of 18 and 40, people that could be the most productive? So I want to go back home, but I want to know that there's some sort of starting point and some sort of progress.
Would there be something that you thought maybe the filmmaker left out?
The film focused on, made him the hero villain, like as if he brought down Zim by himself. That's what I kind of got from the film. And to me, it's a lot of little elements put together, not just him, but obviously, you can't talk about Zim without talking about him. But there's a lot of little stuff that they didn't talk about that puts the problem in one, that you can't give one solution to it, pretty much. You can't wait for the government to do something for you, because if you wait, you will wait forever. You have to make the first step. Whether it's to start your own business or to support, to go into politics yourself and change that, whatever is going on at the moment.
The constitution thing is, Zimbabweans, I hope we have learned from what happened in 2000. In 2000, they got half what they wanted, and they rejected the constitution. And I believe Mugabe is in power today because we Zimbabweans, I voted in that election, I voted no, and I regret voting no, because if we had voted yes for that constitution, that's not everything we wanted, but at least that's something. So with this constitution, I hope that even though it's not perfect, that people are going to accept it, because no matter how bad it could be, it's not going to be worse than what's currently there. So let's take it however it is, let's take it, and then once we become a free people again, make a truly people constitution when conditions allow. Let's not reject it, let's take it.